Right now, you are breathing. You have been breathing every single moment of your life. And you have almost certainly been doing it wrong. Not slightly wrong. Not in a way that barely matters. Wrong in a way that is quietly reshaping the bones of your face, degrading your sleep, shortening your attention span, and running your nervous system into the ground, one unconscious breath at a time. The real answer to why is far stranger than you think. Because this is not a story about lungs. It is a story about the mouth. Your mouth was never supposed to breathe. That sounds absurd. You have a mouth. Air moves through it constantly. When you are stuffed up, when you sprint for a bus, when you sleep with your lips parted, the mouth is right there, filling in. Feels natural. Feels fine. But your body has another opinion. Sit with this for a second. Your nose is not just a hole in your face. It is a biological air processing system so sophisticated that modern engineering has never fully replicated it. Every cubic centimeter of air that enters through your nostrils gets warmed to body temperature, humidified to exactly the right moisture level, filtered through layers of mucus and tiny moving hairs, and charged with a molecule called nitric oxide that your lungs need to properly absorb oxygen. None of that happens through your mouth. Not one step. When you breathe through your mouth, you bypass the entire system. Dr. Jayakar Nayak, a rhinologist at Stanford University, describes the nose as the silent workhorse of human health, a guardian that has been running in the background since long before you were born. Research from his lab has shown that nasal breathing produces measurably higher blood oxygen saturation than mouth breathing, even at rest, even when the airflow volume is identical. The difference is not in how much air you take in. It is in how efficiently your body uses it. That difference compounds. Every hour, every night, every year. So how did this happen? How did so many humans end up defaulting to the mouth? The answer starts in a place you would not expect. The history of the human skull. Your ancient ancestors, the ones who lived tens of thousands of years before you, had wider jaws, straighter teeth, and broader nasal passages. Anthropologists who study skeletal remains from pre-agricultural populations consistently find skulls with almost no crowded teeth, no impacted wisdom teeth, and sinus cavities that opened wide and clear. The skull was built for breathing well. Then something changed. Around 10,000 years ago, when humans shifted from hunting and gathering to farming, the diet changed dramatically. Tough, fibrous, chewy food was replaced by softer, processed grains. The jaw no longer had to work as hard. And when a muscle stops working, the structure it shapes stops growing. Dr. Daniel Lieberman, an evolutionary biologist at Harvard, has argued that the modern human face is an evolutionary mismatch. We have the same genes that once built wide, robust faces, but they are expressing themselves inside mouths that no longer chew enough to trigger full development. The result is a narrower palate, a more crowded dental arch, and a nasal airway that is compressed before it even has a chance to work properly. In other words, your skull may be smaller than it was supposed to be, and that smaller skull is making it harder to breathe through your nose. And so you breathe through your mouth, and the cycle feeds itself. This is not an ancient problem sitting quietly in history books. It is happening in real time inside your face and inside the faces of your children. Orthodontists began noticing the signs decades ago. Not just crowded teeth, which now affect the majority of children in industrialized countries, but a related pattern of symptoms. Long, narrow faces, receding chins, high-arched palates, open mouths, even at rest. These are not random variations. They are features that cluster together, and they cluster most strongly in populations that breathe through their mouths chronically during childhood, when the face is still developing. The medical term for the cluster is mouth-breathing phenotype. But the researchers who study it call it something else informally. They call it the face that grew wrong. And the reason it grows wrong is pressure. Not pressure in the emotional sense. Literal, physical air pressure inside your airway. When you breathe through your nose with your mouth closed, your tongue rests naturally against the roof of your mouth. This is called the correct tongue posture, and most adults no longer maintain it unconsciously. When the tongue is pressed against the palate, it exerts gentle, constant pressure that helps the upper jaw develop wide and forward. When the tongue drops to the floor of the mouth, which happens whenever you are a chronic mouth breather, that pressure disappears. The palate narrows. The upper teeth crowd. The lower jaw hangs. Dr. John Mew, an orthodontist who spent decades studying facial growth, called this mechanism orthotropics. The idea that the direction of facial growth is steered by soft tissue forces, including the position of the tongue. His work was controversial in the dental establishment for years, partly because it implied that modern orthodontics was treating a symptom without addressing the cause. But the underlying biomechanical logic has since found support in peer-reviewed research and is increasingly cited in studies of craniofacial development. The mouth was not the problem. The mouth was responding to a problem that started much earlier, and fixing it requires going back further. Now you are sleeping. This is where mouth breathing stops being about your face and becomes about your brain. Most people know about sleep apnea, the condition where the airway collapses during sleep, causing you to stop breathing briefly and startle yourself awake. What most people do not know is that mouth breathing is one of the most reliable predictors of sleep-disordered breathing, even in people who do not have a formal apnea diagnosis. When you sleep with your mouth open, the tongue is more likely to fall back toward the throat. The soft tissue of the airway is more likely to vibrate. Your breathing becomes shallower. Your sleep stages shift. You spend less time in the deep, restorative stages of sleep where your brain clears metabolic waste, consolidates memory, and regulates cortisol. You wake up technically having slept 8 hours but feeling like you slept 5. Matthew Walker, a neuroscientist at the University of California, Berkeley, and the author of a landmark study on sleep architecture, has written that the quality of breathing during sleep may be one of the most underestimated variables in cognitive health. Even mild reductions in sleep oxygen levels repeated night after night can affect working memory, emotional regulation, and the ability to concentrate. You thought you were just bad at mornings. Your airway was working against you all night. There is a quieter version of this that almost never gets discussed. It does not show up on a sleep study. It does not get a diagnosis. It is simply the background hum of a nervous system that cannot fully rest because the body is always, at some level, working harder than it should be to breathe. Chronic mouth breathing activates the sympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for alertness, vigilance, and the stress response. This makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Breathing through the mouth is what your ancestors did when they were running, when they were afraid, when something was chasing them. It is the breathing of urgency. Your body still reads it that way. When you sit at your desk breathing through your mouth, your nervous system registers low-level stress. Not enough to feel like a panic attack. Enough to keep cortisol slightly elevated. Enough to make it harder to calm down. Enough to tighten your shoulders, narrow your focus, and make everything feel slightly more effortful than it should. Nasal breathing, by contrast, triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch that says, you are safe, you can rest, you can digest, you can think clearly. Your exhale through the nose is longer, slower, and laced with that nitric oxide, which acts as a vasodilator, opening your blood vessels and improving circulation to the brain. The difference is not metaphorical. It is measurable. In a study published in the Journal of Neurophysiology, researchers found that nasal breathing increased activity in the hippocampus, the region responsible for memory formation, significantly more than mouth breathing during cognitive tasks. The breath, it turns out, is not just keeping you alive. It is shaping how well your brain works right now. So what do you do with this? The fix is not complicated. But it does require one thing you are not used to giving your breath: attention. The first step is awareness. Right now, check your mouth. Is it open? Is your tongue resting on the floor of your mouth? Are your lips slightly parted? If so, this is likely your default state. It has been your default state for years, possibly decades. Closing your mouth is a start. But the real change happens when you retrain your resting tongue posture, keeping the tongue pressed gently to the roof of your mouth, behind the front teeth, with lips sealed. This is how your ancestors sat. This is how children breathe before the airway begins to narrow. It feels awkward at first because your muscles have not been holding this position. They will adapt. The second step is the nose, always the nose. Even during exercise, try to keep more of your breathing nasal. It will feel limiting at first. That limitation is the point. It trains your respiratory system to become more efficient, to extract more oxygen from each breath rather than simply pulling in more volume. And at night, the most important hours, consider nasal breathing support. Many people who have struggled for years with poor sleep, morning fatigue, or restlessness in bed have reported significant changes from something as simple as keeping the mouth closed during sleep. Here is what you need to understand about all of this. Your breath has been running in the background of your entire life like an open tab you forgot to close. It has been shaping your face. It has been modulating your sleep. It has been whispering to your nervous system about whether you are safe or not, all while you were busy doing other things. The ancient truth is this: your body built an extraordinary machine for taking in air. It spent millions of years refining it. It gave you a nose with turbinates and mucous membranes and nitric oxide and a filtering system that science still does not fully understand. You just started using the backup door. And right now, in this moment, breathing through your nose while you read this, you are already closer to the way your body was always meant to work.